Welcome to Session Sunday. Hi guys, it's Jack Edwards, and in today's video we're going to be focusing on practicing penetrating space. But before we get into this week's video, make sure to leave us a like and subscribe, and if you missed last week's video, click on the link above. Okay, so moving into the first part of this week's session, we're going to be focusing on a technical unopposed practice. Okay, so we're going to be focusing on receiving the ball, taking it into space. But before we get into it, let's have a look at how many players we're working with this week and the equipment that we'll be using. So for the full session, we're going to be working with 12 players, okay, but you can adapt that for more and less players as well. We're not going to be working with goalkeepers, okay, but for the second two practices, you can add goalkeepers in. So if you want to do it at the start, you can send the goalkeepers off to do a warm-up and work on some goalkeeper-specific training, and then bring them in when you're going to move on to part 2 and part 3. Now, in terms of the equipment, we're going to be focusing on using balls, bibs, cones. Then if you have poles or mannequins, that would be brilliant, okay, to use, so the player's got to focus on getting away from a defender. And then when we move into using small-sided goals, you can use the poles instead to mark out the area if you don't have small-sided goals. Now, in terms of the setup for this part of the session, you're going to split your group into 2 groups of 6, okay, maybe 2 groups of 7, 2 groups of 8, okay. Now, in terms of the depth, okay, so from the cone here to here, each side, okay, we're going to have 10 yards. So we're going 10, 20. Then we're just going to have 3 yards in here, okay. So you got a 13-yard pass into here, and then there's 5 yards in the middle, okay. So if you think about it, you've got 20 yards in here, then it goes to 26, and then about 30 to 31 yards. And then we're going to have 10 yards either side as well, so 20 yards of width. And these players are going to start central, okay, and out from the middle area in here. Now the players are going to be rotating as well, and we're focusing on attacking that space, okay? So the ball's going to start here, okay, where we've got 2 players. So if you had 7 players, you can have an extra player there as well. The ball's going to get played into the middle player, okay, who looks to set it for this player to receive, okay, just in front of the cone, okay. They then look to spin out this player, and this player looks to move out to where they've played to the right-hand side. Now, once this player receives it, they're going to play across into this player here, okay, who looks to set it into space for this player to meet and then play out first time. Now, the movement, okay, is going to be the player who was out wide here on the right will move central. The player who was central will spin off to be the wide player here, okay. The wide player here goes to the back of this queue, and this player moves out wide right. Now, what we're going to see, okay, is that this player is going to receive it. So we're going to start here, but they're then going to open out, okay, to receive, after they've received it, to play to this player here. So they will have time to run to receive this, to set, okay, play into here and spin out to come across this way. Okay, so then this player is going to come out to this side. So these players always move to the right-hand side. Once this player receives it here, they're going to play across to this side. Okay, and then they're going to move in short to receive it, okay, and set across to this player here who's moved off the cone to open out. So then the player who started it will move out right. This player who started in here will end up being central, okay. The player who was central spins out to here, and then this player goes back to the start there. So now you've got some players doing the same roles, okay. So what you can do is, after a certain amount of time, look to swap the players over who've maybe started on the outside with some players in the middle. So we're focusing on meeting that ball, okay. So when we're playing out here, when we're playing through here, meet it to set and then create space by spinning off, okay. So then this player can penetrate the space through there. It can get played back through, okay, and then we penetrate the space again by playing out. So the players are moving up, 1 each time. And we're basically getting some players moving forward and back, some players moving across, and then some players doing different rotations as well. We will now move into our first animation before moving on to part 2 of this week's session. Now moving into part 2 of this week's session, we're now focusing more on a possession-based practice, okay, which is going to be looking at switching the play, so we're trying to create space to penetrate and play forward. So if you did have goalkeepers for this part, where you've got the defensive team in the middle, when they win the ball back, they could look to go and attack a goal, okay? But what we're going to do for now is they're going to try and win the ball back a certain amount of times, okay, before transitioning with one team on the outside. So in terms of the setup, we're going to have two 15-yard areas, okay, and a 10-yard area in the middle. So we've got 40 yards of total depth. In terms of width, okay, 15 yards in here, and then the outside ones, okay, can be between 5 and 10 yards, okay? So maybe start a little bit smaller, okay, and then maybe increase or decrease it. Now, if you wanted to as well, these players in here can be used for switch and play. But if you wanted to as well, they can move in centrally, okay? So one could move in centrally to combine, and they may be able to turn and play. So you don't just want them locked into the zone, okay? But you could say one player at a time can go in and try and help combine. So they could bounce it in here, they could even play out wide and then play through as well. So if you say the Blues have to win the ball back 3 times, okay? Whichever team they win it back the most off will then go in the middle. So if the Reds lose it twice and the Yellows lose it once, then obviously the Reds will go in and so forth. And we can do a point system every time one team switches the play. So it comes from one team's player. So if it's the Reds in here, every time they get to switch it into there, they can get a point and so on. Now focusing on limiting the touches. So it's 3v1 in here, okay? Now, if you wanted to, you could go 3v2, but then you're leaving the gaps in the middle. So we're trying to focus on these two boys staying compact in here, okay? Making it difficult. They can't go into this area, but as soon as this player comes into here, they can look to intercept it. So ball comes in, okay? We're manoeuvring that ball about, okay? They're trying to win that ball back. This player might step up, okay? These players come across to make it difficult to play through this side. This player can either stay wide, or they could drop in, receive, open out, play across instantly, okay? This player can look to close down. Now, the players on the outside can swap over with someone in the box, okay? When it's switch play, when the ball's in one of the opposition boxes, okay, can switch over so the players aren't doing the same roles all the time. Sometimes these might not get as much of the ball. So again, what we're trying to do is stretch it so it's hard for this player, play off different lines. So this player then might move in, this player might move out. And then again, can we create space for somebody else to receive it? So after we've played the pass, can we look to move just a couple of yards, penetrate that space through there, okay? There's an option to turn out and play. So communication as well, telling the players time, turn, man on, okay? If they haven't got time and space, tell them. Can they open out? And then when they see a pass, can you ask for it as well? Can you demand the ball? So that ball keeps switching over, okay? So for the Blues, okay, they're just looking to maybe stop these passes coming through as well. When a player's closing down one side, making sure they can't play through easily. And then if there's a chance to intercept it as it comes through, we can do that. Ball will start again with the coach, and then they will go again. And also, these players can swap over as well at any time, to make sure that certain players are getting more rest as well. So utilise the space that we've got to move the ball quickly. When there's a chance to play through, can we do it? We don't have to go through the middle, we can miss them out. So we're focusing on these players creating space. That's why we've got them wide to start with, so they're stretching the opposition, okay, so we can play through. Then again, if they're over one side, can a player even come in the middle to receive it, to then play forward? If you wanted to, you could do a set amount of passes for these players. So they might have to do 3 passes or 5 passes before switching it. Or if you wanted to, it can be as soon as they've played it across, it can go again. So maybe look to progress that as the drill goes on. We will now move into our next animation before moving on to the final part of this week's session. Okay, now moving into the final part of this week's session. We're now moving into, it's a small-sided game-based scenario, focusing on possession, switch and play, creating space to penetrate, and also transition to try and score. So, in terms of the setup, okay, in terms of the depth, we're going to have 30 yards, so 2 15-yard areas. In terms of the width, 20 yards, but each side in here just brought in a couple of yards. So we're trying to create a little diagonal line here for each one. Now, it'll be 5 yards further back for each small-sided goal as well. So if you have goalkeepers, you could look to have them involved as players in possession and then trying to save out of possession. So one team could attack one goal, one team could attack the other goal, so trying to penetrate space to score. The yellows are going to be floaters. Now you could have 4 teams if you wanted to. So you could have these in greens or non-bibs, and you can look to swap over after a certain amount of time. Reds and blues swap over with greens and yellows, and so forth. So we can talk about a different progression there to make it a different small-sided game. Now, if the ball gets played into the reds, okay, we've got 2 halves just because these 2 floaters are going to stay in these halves and these players here. But these players are free to move, but we don't want all 3 players in one area, okay? One player is switching up, okay? So it could be that when this player receives the ball here, this player makes that forward run across the pitch to create space for this player to receive, okay? You might bounce it here to there and then gets played back in. Now, the floaters on the outside, okay, have to play back into the middle when they receive it. To any player, but they have to play back into the middle. So the players on the outside, okay, after a few minutes can swap over. So if you keep these 3 players, this player can swap over here, and then after a few minutes, this player can swap over here, and so on. Now, the team who's in possession, okay, every time they switch the play, okay, so they switch it from one box to another, okay, they can score a point. Or you could do every 5 passes that they get can be a point. Every 10 passes that they get is a point. Now, when the opposite team looks to win the ball back, so they need to focus on winning the ball back centrally. So when the ball goes into wide areas, control what they can, okay, stop players getting the ball. When the ball comes in centrally, then can they look to win it back, and they look to score in either goal. Now, another correct progression can be that the team in possession has to get a certain amount of passes and then look to score. So it could be that they have to get 5 passes, and then whatever half they're in, when they get the 5th pass, they then have to switch the play to go into the other box and then score. Okay, so that's how we can do it there. Now, a progression can be, instead of it just being possession all the time, penetrate space quickly. So if you had 2 goalkeepers, let's say the reds are in this half to start, they've got to score in this goal. Blues are in this half trying to score in that goal, okay? Or you can just be, they've got to work the ball into the other half to then score, get the ball again and then score, okay? So if you wanted to adapt it, so it's more focus on scoring, okay? So penetrating space to score, whereas now we're focused on penetrating space to keep possession and then score, okay? So you can adapt it from going set amount of passes, keeping the ball switch in play, to then going to trying to score as many goals. So penetrating space, and that's where you could have 4 different teams. Winning team can stay on, teams can just rotate. So if you look at it here, the way we've got set up, so we've got 2 reds in one area, so we've got a 3v2 overload in here and a 2v1 overload in here. So we're trying to create overloads with the floater, so you don't need all 3 players in one area. So the ball can come in, can we play out? Okay, this player could then make that movement in there. It comes in centrally, we play into here, okay, sets into there, and we play there. So we're focusing on movement, okay, it's fluid, we're moving the ball quickly. So players are obviously free to move anywhere, but we don't want all these players following the ball, okay? Can we create space? Think about the wide players that you've got, okay? So when you're trying to receive the ball, an angle to say, okay, we can bounce it out, play into there, okay, now we've got the ball out of pressure, now we can think of movement. So these might have 2 players in here, we've got 3. So think about our movement. When the ball comes into here, can this player move out? Can someone follow? Penetrate the space playing through, open out, play in, then we can get across and support it again. So focusing on movement, not just to receive the ball, but to create space for our teammates as well, to then create space to play through and then penetrate that space again. So can we receive on the back foot? Can we play first time? Can we use those floaters on the outside to then give us a bit of time to move as well? So we're playing out of pressure to get set and receive the ball again. We will now move into our final animation before concluding this week's session. Thanks for watching this week's video. Don't forget to head over to our website where you can sign up to view all of our exclusive content. And we'll see you next week for another Session Sunday.